Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, so Mortal Kombat 10, Mortal Kombat X, whatever you want to call it. Where do you stand on the whole Mortal Kombat thing?
I've always liked Mortal Kombat. I loved the first game almost as much as Street Fighter because I was a kid and it was incredibly violent.
Yeah.
And I really enjoyed the last one. The stuff in the middle can take or leave. But yeah, I have been quite excited for this one. I played it briefly, in fact, and enjoyed what I played.
Yeah, I mean, I've never thought of myself as a Mortal Kombat fan, but I was before this came out, a friend and I were talking about it, and we realised that we both owned every Mortal Kombat game, including spin-offs and Game Boy ports, even the appalling N64 game, Mortal Kombat Mythology. We basically owned every Mortal Kombat game, so I'd never consider myself a Mortal Kombat fan, but by default I think I am. And Mortal Kombat 10 is a solidly good game. And if you've been anticipating it the way some of my friends have been, in all probability you're going to enjoy it massively. It's extremely well made and it's packed with content and it's genuinely good fun, but I just don't think it's a patch on Mortal Kombat 9, and that's primarily why I don't love it as much as some other people seem to. I just think it's a considerably lesser game than Mortal Kombat 9. First off, I have a bit of a strange issue with this kind of stiffness to the combat. I still haven't really gotten my head around that. I mean, even friends of mine who think that this game is like a contender for Game of the Year, they tend to agree with me on the kind of stiff. Did you feel that at all when you were playing it?
I only played 2 matches. I didn't really notice that, no.
Okay, well, I mean, it's just slightly stiff. I mean, the thing about Mortal Kombat 9 was that, like any half-decent fighting game that's been released in the last 6, 7 years, or however long it's been, it stole pretty liberally from Street Fighter 4, and that gave it a kind of looseness that the Mortal Kombat series was definitely not known for beforehand. So Mortal Kombat 10 goes back to the more slightly rigid style of fighting that's more synonymous with the very first game. So it's a small step back from what Mortal Kombat 9 was, and I think that's a bit of a mistake. And that's one reason is that really affects combos, because one of the great things about Mortal Kombat 9 was that you could be really experimental with combos, and really, spending even half an hour toying around with a specific character, you'd often end up with a couple of combos that felt like they were yours, because there was genuinely so much variation was possible, and it was encouraged as well. And here, your curiosity and your kind of will to experiment is not rewarded anywhere near as well as it was in 9. My friends and I have found ourselves looking online for combo breakdowns rather than discovering them ourselves, and that just makes for a less engaging experience overall, I think. Because the combos just aren't flexible enough, and combos were a pretty big part of the appeal of the last Mortal Kombat. As everybody has said, the single-player campaign in Mortal Kombat 10 is pretty much brilliant, but nobody, to my knowledge, has mentioned how staggeringly shit poor the AI is, which is, I mean, that just completely knocked me for 6. I mean, I may be misremembering how similarly poor the AI was in Mortal Kombat 9 and Injustice, but as great as the story mode is in Mortal Kombat 10, the AI just made me hate it a little bit, because it does those things like if you're blocking, you'll get attacked the microsecond that you let go of block, and your opponents can supernaturally react. The instant you jump, they can react. And I lost count of how many times I'd win the first round, and then I'd get annihilated for the next 2 rounds. Annihilated, can't even land a single hit. And that's fine one time, when you sit back and think, hey, that was really close, I thought I was going to win that one, but then I got my backside handed to me. But after the 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th time, I just wanted to stop playing it. I got so fed up of having the same outcome over and over again. And it's one of those games in single player that's hard, and then you die, and then it's easy. So you don't have to step up, you don't have to raise your game and experiment, you just have to lose, and then it makes everything easier for you. There's no sense of achievement, there's no challenge, and arguably thus there's no real point. And that is a damn shame, because it's another one of those, they've mastered this kind of stupid ass romp that's just, it's basically the Avengers with Mortal Kombat characters. Just really, really enjoyable, really goofy nonsense. I mean, they really know their audience now, and it's the kind of thing that if the AI wasn't completely god-awful, I'd probably go back in and do it again. So the campaign, it's really, I mean, it's not new, I'll say that. I mean, I read a couple of articles, I think one of them was on Eurogamer, where it was kind of suggested that this was the best fighting game campaign ever, and it was fresh and whatnot. I don't deny that it's potentially one of the best campaigns in a fighting game, despite my problems with it. but it's following a blueprint that, you know, they started with MK9 and then they carried on through Injustice.
Yeah.
So it's brilliant in the same way that those games were, but fresh is not the word I'd use to describe it. But if you're needless to say, if you're a really heavy duty fan of Mortal Kombat, you're going to probably go a bit nuts for this, and you know, people have been so far. If you can handle the stupid AI, basically, you're laughing. In terms of smaller problems, which I suppose you could probably consider to be niggles, the health bar and the energy bar are next to each other at the top of the screen, and they are just straight white lines. And I thought that after well over 20 plus hours of playing the game that I'd start recognising the difference between those two bars, but that hasn't happened yet. I still die and wonder, hey, you know, I thought I had health, but I end up, you know, I mistook the health bar for the energy bar.
Right.
It's just two slender white lines. I'm just for a game as slick and, you know, good looking as this, I just thought it was a tad weird that it's so simplistic. I don't think that works anyway. Another thing that still continues to bother me is that combo breakers are a bit of a problem, because in general there are less combos in the game, which means that there are less long and more damaging combos. So I understand that if you have combos in a fighting game, you have to have a combo breaker. You have to. There's no way around that. But even friends of mine who I would consider to be seasoned players already, who regularly use 10 plus hit combos and whatnot, they still execute combo breakers accidentally far more often than they do on purpose, which is really annoying because that bar contributes to your X-ray meter, so you're throwing your X-ray meter away, when you do that on purpose. So yeah, I mean, there are 4 fighter factions now. Every fight is part of a faction, and everything you do online and off contributes to your faction. And every few days one faction wins and then it starts over again. It's a really nice, but I mean, it's a totally disposable feature, but a very nice one, I think. And there are innumerable towers with innumerable challenges and variations and stuff. You know, there's more than a decent amount of content, but I am not particularly happy about the presence of paid content because I think they've crossed the line. Have you heard anything about the DLC?
I have actually, yeah, about the very expensive extra characters and whatnot.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, there are also things like you can pay for easy fatalities, and you know that's a shame because 5 or 10 years ago that would have been a cheat code or something, you know, not something you had to pay for. And in my view, they shouldn't be in the game, but whatever. That's the day, you know, those are the days we live in. In terms of online, the netcode on Xbox One, at least, which is where I've been playing it, the only word to describe it is erratic. The game has been out for 2 weeks now, and it was erratic on day 1, and it's still erratic now. I mean, we can play for an evening and have no problems, and then the next day we have non-stop lag and ceaseless disconnects, and then the next day it's fine again, and so on and so on. So it's hard to know what to fix because it works fine 50% of the time. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens over time and whether or not they can iron those issues out, because it's not terrible. It's just it's just inexplicable. It works, but then sometimes it just doesn't. You can turn the game on one day and they're not there, so I don't know. It's a little bit all over the place, really, to be honest. But anyway, look, Mortal Kombat 10 is really well made. It's enjoyable and it works just about well enough. But in my view, it's a lesser game than the last one. It's a lesser game than Injustice, and I think it's a lesser game than a lot of the old. Well, I mean, Mortal Kombat 2 and 4 specifically. I have enjoyed this and I will continue to enjoy it, but it feels more like a sequel to the last god-awful pre-MK9 game rather than a sequel to MK9, which is what I and everyone I know really wanted. But if you're a fan, I should once again point out that I do have friends who love this unconditionally and think it's a Game of the Year contender, so I'm not writing it off. I personally do not love it at this point, but maybe I will one day.